जाने आलम खाकी टीवी चैनल देखने वाले तमाम नाजरीन को वेलकम। आज के इस सेशन में मैंने आपके लिए दो गेस्ट बुलाए हैं जो एक बहुत दिलचस्प पॉइंट पर हम गुफ्तगू करने वाले हैं। तो ये डिस्कशन आज का मोस्टली इंग्लिश में होगा, हम उर्दू भी यूज़ करेंगे, लेकिन मोस्टली हम इंग्लिश में करना चाहते हैं ताकि यंगस्टर्स भी और ओनली इंग्लिश जानने वाले लोगों के लिए भी काबिल फेम हो या अंडरस्टैंडेबल हो। ठीक है जी, मुझे अभी शिफ्ट करने दे दीजिए इंग्लिश के अंदर। Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to invite you for this discussion today on Jane Alam Khaki YouTube channel. Today we are going to discuss some very interesting issue that affect lots of people in this world. Today with me, I have Mr. Liaqat Khaja, and sitting with him is Mr. Sahil Badruddin. The point of discussion is, sorry, as you know, for the last couple of 100 years, lots of people have moved from the developing countries to the developed countries. They include all sorts of people, cultures, faiths, traditions, and what have you. So we are today trying to look at the great attractions, the great blessings for which many of us have moved to the West temporarily or for good. And we want to look at some of the great blessings that people enjoy in these developed countries. And on the other hand, we would also like to discuss what are some of the challenges that people moving from the developing countries to the developed countries face, and try to grapple with them so that we appreciate the blessings and also the challenges, and see how best ourselves and our coming generations can cope with these situations and take maximum benefit from the blessings. So my dear Liaqat and Sahil, the good things that we generally consider the people coming from the developing countries feel attractions as you know, in my view, this is my view, there could be lots, but I'm just selecting a couple of them, like, for example, safety and security and peace very generally in these societies. Although here also there are challenges, but still very generally speaking, relatively speaking, Western world is much stable and relatively peaceful. So that's one thing we will look at. And there are many others. So let us start with this first dimension. Safety, security, and peace. Do you think many people would move because of lack of all these things in their relative countries, and seeing a relatively much more tranquility, peace, and stability in these societies? Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Saab, for inviting, first of all, us on to discuss on this topic.
My pleasure.
We have, as you mentioned, that there are many blessings. So this is one of the blessings of moving from east to west, or from developing world to developed world. Safety and security. Besides safety and security, there are many other benefits. So people definitely consider this as one of the important benefit of moving from a developing world to developed countries. And they always do the weighting. Okay, if they move from developing world to developed world, safety is one. There are other areas as well. So when they consider, so safety is one part which they consider as a benefit of moving from developing to developed world. But I hope that we will be discussing more about the other many benefits.
Yeah, if you like, you can identify any other aspect so that we identify some of the key factors.
Yeah, so again, it depends that who is moving, right? There are different segments of society members who move from developing world. You sometimes hear that, oh, this politician has been moved. It is not that they don't have the educational facilities there, or they don't have the financial resources there. So that is one segment. There are people who have a very talented children. They get educational opportunities here. So sometimes they, because of those educational opportunities which are available in the developed world, that is another segment which move from developing world to developed country. Then there are third group which specifically move for the financial resources. Okay, if they have an opportunity of moving from developing countries to a developed country, okay, because their financial situations are not good, they find an opportunity. If they get an opportunity, they will consider that as a prime benefit, but there will be other benefits. So safety security will be another benefit for them. Sure. Education will be another benefit for their children or for themselves. And then clean environment, good hygiene services. There are many. I am working on the healthcare industry, so I may be talking more about the healthcare perspective.
Sure, of course.
So getting healthcare services, primary healthcare, preventive healthcare, secondary healthcare, hospital services. The way education is important, health is also important.
Excellent.
So that is additional benefits. So they consider many benefits. Sure. It depends upon the different segments of the society.
Sure. As we move forward, we'll identify more.
Yes.
Sahil, having spent most of your life here, you moved here probably when you were quite young with your parents. How do you see, looking at your parents' life and others, what do you consider as a great blessing of moving here?
I think first of all, thank you for having us today.
Pleasure.
I think some of the elements you identified, right, primarily being the financial and the cleaner environment, educational aspects, just better hygiene, better living conditions, better material quality of life. I think those are very successful elements. You can see why individuals move from the east to the west, right? Technological advances, the use of just having, easy access to technology, easy access to healthcare, right? And healthcare facilities. I think some of the social service elements, I think those are critical aspects. But there's more opportunity for elderly care, as you and I have discussed in the past, right? So I think those are the elements that people find fruitful when they move from the east to the west here.
Great. Yeah. These are powerful advantages. When they are not there, only then we can realize, what blessings we have here. Liaquat, you were going ahead with a number of blessings. Would you like to mention any other blessing here?
Yeah. So, once the person moves from developing country to a developed world, they have one or two specific things in mind, right? Yeah. Either they are going for education or financial resources or safety reason or whatever. But when they come here, then there are many added benefits and advantages. Public system, public infrastructure is excellent in the developed world. Having the greater road system, infrastructure, healthcare institution, educational institution, the school districts are there. So they have a choice to stay in the area which they like. Okay, this school district is very important. Right?
Yes.
So all these elements. So once they come, they may go in a neighborhood which is not very expensive. They will settle there for some time. They will explore. There's a great support system available here. There are organizations who will help the refugees as a refugee person to help them make sure that they are on the right path, they are getting all the services. There are other organizations who are helping the immigrants community, especially.
Yes.
They are helping them to understand the system, where to go for the education help, where to go for the healthcare system, where to go for the family support services, where to go and find the jobs, where to go and find, other whatever challenges they are facing while they are moved to a developed country. So one or two reasons bring them here, but then they get the whole package.
Yes,
which is I will say that it will be considered as a blessing for them. That okay, we are now here. There, I have seen people who have never thought that they will drive a car in our countries, right?
Yeah.
When they hear, I see, okay, our from our culture, there are people who I have never thought they will drive a car. They are here, they are driving cars, and they are very comfortable. So this is
Yes.
happiness.
I want to chip in here. Sorry for interruption, but this is something very interesting. For Sahil, it might be particularly interesting. When I was teaching at a university back home, there was one of the students who was coming every day, dropped by her husband, and then picked up by her husband. It was almost an hour's drive. I said, why don't you learn how to drive so that you can come and go? I'm sure you have many cars. She came from a rich family. Sir, she said, I have been begging my parents, my first parents, and then afterwards the husband and mother-in-law, father-in-law. They all said, no, women are not supposed to drive. So, and husband would say, no problem, I'll pick you and drop. So after some, she said, I continue to bug them that I need to learn driving. I told her, please never give up on this husband. This is your primary right. You are a woman and a great human being. You're getting education at the university. You have all sorts of powers and talents. Keep on bugging them. And one day I can assure you, you will come to my office within a couple of years. It's a matter of a couple of years. One day you will come to my office, a car's keys in your hand, and you tell me, sir, I have driven my car today. Lo and behold, Liaquat and Sahil, after 2 to 3 years, she graduated and I didn't hear her anymore. After 2 to 3 years, one day there's a knock and said, he's coming. And here she is with a beaming personality and a key in her hand, saying, sir, I have come today driving myself.
See?
So imagine the kind of happiness. Women here, many senior women, for example, they start
and just to add
the sense of empowerment they feel when they drive.
To add here, there are many females, especially from our country, when we have seen them in our country, they have not worked and they have never thought of going to work and earn some money because there they are settled. They have their, support staff or support members at the home. They are doing their work and they are just relaxing at home. When they come here, they see that there are a similar type of, community members, females who are working. They are earning for their family. And when they come here, they are encouraged by the other people. And now you will see that 80-90% of such females are working women. And they are not only working, engaging themselves, learning the environment, understanding the environment, and getting some, financial help for the family too.
Yes, and what that means is self-empowerment.
Yes.
When they work, when they earn, the kind of self-empowered they feel, as independent human beings. Very often, I make that provocative remark. Many a times in many cultures, only men live. Women survive. So this is a problem because women live for men. Very generally. I'm not saying this is the absolute picture. No, in many societies, there are a lot of respect, a lot of self-empowerment. But very generally, I'm talking about. Let me add one or two, and then we shift to the challenges that they are probably more interesting. I, for one, personally feel that living in a pluralistic society, in a rich diversity, country or countries is in itself a great blessing. What happens is that we develop very exclusive worldviews when we do not have multiple, perspectives around us. We insist only one as the final truth, and that's it. Unless we see other people, how they perceive this world, how they live, I, for one, got exposed to a number of people from different backgrounds, different faith traditions, and what have you. I was very, very enriched. I must say, my many ideas that I entertained as exclusive, as privileged, came to be questioned. So I learned a lot from that perspective, also from the diversity and pluralism of the people. The other thing I got very fascinated is the intellectual life. As you mentioned, there are libraries, for example, with colleges, universities, libraries, free. And, whenever I need a book, for example, if that book is not in that library, they can actually get it from any of the university in the entire United States, for example. What a great blessing, what a great blessing. So, and there are huge other blessings, of course. We are just picking up, as we perceive as the blessings. So let's move to challenges and discuss about a couple of challenges. So what do you think? You may not be able to see the challenge because you're not lived in the, developing countries, Sahil, but among your friends, your parents, relatives around you, what do you think they face as a challenge?
Yeah, I think it's really important to keep in mind when people move from, developing spaces to more developed spaces, you're entering environments which are not your own, right? And so sometimes individuals, families feel obligated to adopt some of the values in the places that they come into, some of the traditions, some of the naturally that happens when you move to new environments, right? You have to face difference, and so there's often that struggle and that happens between values and traditions and cultures, right? When you move into a different space. So that, I think, is one aspect that definitely happens amongst people that decide to move to different places. I think other challenges are customs, right? In part of culture. Other challenges faced are just, the skills they need to adopt, the mindset they need to adopt, right? Not being grown up here, it's difficult because as you're older, you become more set in your ways. And so it's harder to kind of accustom to some of those challenges as well.
Let me ask you a very specific question.
Sure.
Let me give an example of education.
Okay.
School or college or university.
Sure.
Universities down to schools here, for example, encourage critical thinking. Not considering any sacred goats or cows or whatever.
Right.
You ask everything. Whatever your parents tell you, teachers tell us, professors tell us, ask, question.
Sure.
Right? That's the kind of teachings encouraged if there are good universities, good colleges, and good schools. Critical thinking is must. That's primary. In many parts of the, as you said, the developing spaces, there is the reverse. Respect your parents, whatever they say, obey. Elders, respect, whatever they say, you accept. Teachers, whatever they tell you, just accept, don't question them. Don't ask too many questions, listen more, and ask less. And then value systems, whether they are faith systems or cultural systems, you just adopt. Your mother says, put on dupatta on your head. You have to do that. Don't ask, what is the value of this dupatta? That is not cultural in that context. Did you face any similar issues when you are going to school or college or university? In terms of your home background then, saying, "Beta, no, this is not our culture. This is not our. These are not our values."
Sure.
Do you have any experience of this time?
Yeah. So I'm gonna expand what you said a little bit more.
Please.
Right. And so I think what happens, right? So there's two tendencies, I would say, that happens, right? There's one tendency, as you mentioned, very traditional, cultural, rigid, perhaps maybe dogmatic, right, in their ways. And then there's the other side, which is very freedom oriented, very critical thinking, very secular, right? And I think what ends up happening is people, by their nature, end up picking one side over the other, and they don't end up picking what is good in each of them and then leaving what is bad in each of them. So they tend to keep what is good and what is bad in both of them, right? So on the critical thinking side, they will question everything, but then they will let go of all traditions and customs and values, right? And on the traditional side, they'll keep their customs and values and traditions, but then they won't have the critical aspect in thinking of it. And I think what my approach has been is to take what is good and leave what is bad, right? And to do that critical thinking exercise. Rather than saying a tradition has no value, let's figure out why the tradition was there in the first place. What was the reason it was oriented, right? And so I've seen both sides in my family environment and my school environment, but my approach has been to evaluate things carefully rather than, this idea of letting the baby go with the bathwater, right? And so I think we have to kind of reflect upon why things are the way they are. And if they have no value, let them go. But I think that's the clash that has been there.
Okay, let me go further and ask you a very critical question.
Sure.
This is difficult to respond, I know, but still I ask you. What are your guiding principles or a principle that enables you to make those kinds of decisions?
Sure. So I'll give one specific example, right? If I look at particular ethics, right? If I look at an ethic of a sound mind, which you're very familiar in medicine, right? If you look at an ethic of a sound mind, the idea is you do not let anything impede that it affects negatively your mental processes, whether these are drugs, other opioids and such, right? That are negatively impacting your health, right? And I think that metric, right, you can objectively evaluate whether 50 years from now something new comes up. Because what's happening is that every few years something new comes up. Every 2-3 years something new comes up. And so to evaluate something based on a metric that helps you decide if you should involve it in your life or to let it go. I'll give an example. In the case of organ donation, right? Something that is bringing value to life, right? In a traditional mindset, someone might say, oh, you do not defame the body, therefore you do not go through any organ donation, right? You do not have any medical processes, even if you need to save a life, but we do not use those processes to help save a life. So, but in this case, you want to use that because it's also your principle for the sanctity of life. So I think you have to use particular metrics, like I mentioned, to kind of evaluate those situations based on the circumstances. And context always changes. Therefore, you need a fundamental understanding of essential principles. You need to evaluate it as it goes. It's a very thinking process. It's not a very static process.
Yes. I was asking that question, and you very well articulated it. Pragmatism, meaning what works versus the answers are already given.
Right.